You're listening to the Cooking from Scratch podcast. Have you ever wondered how to truly nourish your body from the inside out, especially when you're on a healing journey? My guest today is Charis Sederberg, a former oncology nurse turned certified nutrition therapy practitioner. Charis supports her clients to achieve optimal health by helping them establish their priorities for healing through her Prime To Nourish Foundations model. Whether you're looking to improve your wellness or navigating a health challenge, Charis is here to show us how to prioritize the body's essential functions for lasting, meaningful transformation. So let's dive in. Hi, I'm Aaliyah Iden, and with over 15 years of cooking in professional kitchens and at home for my family, this is the first non-cooking cooking podcast that shares how to make cooking easier so you can feel inspired and motivated to cook in the midst of your busy life. It's the beginning of 2025, and this year I've refocused the podcast and I'm leaning more into the healing aspect of homemade meals. A couple of years ago, I started eating high-protein meals, which resolved some health issues I was having. Then this fall, I started a cooking membership for high-protein eaters to share my favorite recipes and meal plans that I developed to help others on the same journey. When you tune into these episodes, you'll hear from health and fitness coaches and healers about the role and benefits of high-protein eating. Stay tuned for more. Okay, so I'm here with Charis Sederberg, and she is a nutritional therapy practitioner. And I would love to know a little bit more about what that is. Those are some great words. Can you explain what nutrition therapy practitioner is, what a person that has that title does?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here with you today.
Yeah.
So I am also a registered nurse. I was an oncology nurse, took care of cancer patients, my nursing career. And it was really my own health was really suffering and I couldn't get answers in the medical model. And so I went to the Nutrition Therapy Institute, which is a holistic nutrition therapy school in Denver, Colorado. For my nutrition education. So I also have a bachelor's degree in exercise science, and I took a lot of nutrition back then. That was, fresh out of high school, basically. And so I have always had a nutrition knowledge, but I just felt called to go to the Nutrition Therapy Institute. And really, when I went there, my goal was to heal my own body. I really had no intention of helping anyone else with it. And then while I was in school, it just my mind was blown, to be honest. I mean, I had a lot of education about the body, how the body works, physiology, disease process. And I just couldn't believe some of the things I was learning. And it really has changed and shaped the way that I view health. So it's been kind of fun. So really, a nutrition therapy practitioner is a holistic practitioner who views the body in an integrated way. So, in medicine, a lot of times we're trying to separate everything out. You have a doctor for every system or organ. And a lot of times, we struggle with that because really the reality is that our body is intimately connected. And you really can't separate one system or organ from another. And so that makes things very complex and hard to treat. And so I can understand why medicine wants to kind of have things in their nice little box. But the reality is that our body is very connected. And so really that's what nutrition therapy practitioners do, is they don't practice medical nutrition therapy. That is something done by a registered dietitian or a licensed nutrition professional. What we practice really is that holistic view of the body and how you can use nutrition to supplement your health or support your health. That's really the goal.
Yeah, I love that. So is that what people come to you with is, how do people come to you? Like they've hit the end of their road on something, or they are been told they have to eat a certain way? What tends to bring people to you to seek you out?
A good question. Really, the majority of my clients either come to me through a referral from a previous client or someone that I know that knows what I do. But most of the people that come to me either hear about me or find me on the internet is because they have kind of failed that Western medical model. they have gone through treatments, they have gone through meds, and things haven't worked for them. And so they're just kind of frustrated and they don't know what to do. And so that they've heard there's a lot of great information out there now, which is awesome. And they've heard that, maybe diet would help, or, holistic way of viewing health would help. And so they're curious. And so that's, I would say, how the majority of people come to me, is that. And that was me. That was my story. I went to nutrition school to heal my own body. I couldn't get, I had all the tests, tried all the meds, everything, and nothing worked for me. And so I really had to go down that journey of figuring it out. And so that is why I started my practice, is to help other people. And really most of my practice has been focused on digestion. That was my problem. I just didn't digest food very well. And so that's really something that I specialize in. However, as you know, and as I mentioned already, like, digestion is integrated with everything else. And so it's a great focal point, and a lot of people know about the gut now and the importance of gut health, and really digestion is just a component of gut health. But that process we can ignore.
So how can people, like we talked about awareness earlier, whether or not you're aware of how your digestion is, how does a lack of good digestion come up? Is it necessarily pain, or are there other symptoms that could be happening besides just, oh, my stomach hurts, I might not have digested that very well?
Right.
Like, what are kind of like key things you might be looking for, or asking a client or potential client in that realm?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. So really so many thoughts.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to pick.
It's okay. I'll start with this. So I think that, unfortunately, sometimes people get told that's fine if you maybe have a bowel movement once or twice a week. And people are well-meaning, I think, but at the end of the day, it is what is normal and healthy for our bodies is to have at least one bowel movement every day. So it's like a perfect example. People come to me and they say, oh, I go less often, or I go more often. Is that bad? Is that good? I've just, had my life structured around this. Like, people who have like IBS and, have to be close to a bathroom. They just, I work from home now, and that's how I manage it. And my answer to them is, you don't have to suffer with that. These things are, I hate to use the word normal, but the reality is you don't have to have this situation. And while you have, over the time, whether it's months or years, just evolved to deal with this situation, that doesn't have to be your reality. And so awareness is partially like feeling in your gut that something is not right. Like, you don't just have to spend the next 40 years of your life not traveling, or, working from home or whatever, because, you have IBS, for example. And so I think that's part of awareness. Also, anytime you have a symptom, that's really your body's way of telling you that something is happening. And so, sure, you might eat something and it doesn't sit well with you, and maybe you just get kind of a tummy ache, or, like you said, pain or something like that. But that doesn't happen every day or every time you eat. We're looking at more of like consistency and trouble with, like, on a consistent basis. So people who have consistent bloating, consistent bowel irregularity, that is just not acceptable. People don't have to live with that. And so those two things, I think, are probably the most important things for awareness. It's just having the expectation that you can have a better life in that way, and that doesn't have to run your life. I think about a client of mine that was a high-profile attorney, and he literally would never schedule any meetings until the afternoon, because he said he basically spent the entire morning on the toilet because he was so constipated. Yeah. So think about the impact of that on someone's life, right? Yeah. On his home life, on his work life. Like, that's, to me, that's just not acceptable. So he had just kind of shoved it under the carpet. And I think a lot of people do that. And so I try and empower people to be like, no, this is not how I'm going to live. And let's figure out what's going on here.
Yeah. So, like, step one, even encouraging that that isn't normal. Right. Like, there is an answer. We don't have to be uncomfortable.
Exactly. And sometimes people, I took care of cancer patients that had a lot of GI surgeries, and they may have had parts of their bowel, different bowels, small intestine, large intestine removed. And absolutely that impacts your digestion, right? And
Sure.
so but that's kind of like a new normal. And so we have to, again, like optimize that new normal. Or someone who has their gallbladder out, like those are things you're never going to get back. But
Right.
at the end of the day, people are suffering like needlessly, and that just doesn't need to happen.
Right. So you talked about the foundations of as being really important to health. And I really loved that idea because I think it's so true. And I have witnessed this in people, like they'll maybe try a new food or try something that's supposed to be healthy or that's supposed to help them. And they'll go, oh, that didn't work for me. And they try
Mm-hmm.
it like once and then they're like, oh, well, that didn't work for me. And
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
love about the foundational thing is you're like, look, if you're taking, I mean, you're going to say this better, but like if you're taking, say, a medicine that's supposed to help you or doing something that's supposed to help you, but your foundations are really not there, then that thing isn't going to help you. Like you have to really get those foundations. Tell me what those foundations were. They were sleep and some other
Yeah,
things, I
so
think.
it really kind of like my main tenets for my practice and what I support people with when I work with them. This may surprise you a little bit, but the first one is really circadian rhythm. And the reason for that is because our body operates on like a 24-ish hour clock, right?
Right.
And so we've seen that in the literature, in the studies with people who do shift work, and then their health is greatly impacted. So we
Yeah.
know that it can be very detrimental, but it literally affects everything. It affects your mood, your neurotransmitters, your hormones, your digestion. And so I love using that integrated into what we do because it's just like a foundational tenet. The other things are digestion. So obviously, I
Right.
consider myself a digestion expert. I help people very intimately with that. Really, the digestive process is from beginning to end. Really, it starts in your brain. But if you think about it, starting in your mouth with chewing, that is where the chemical part of digestion starts. And then it finishes at the other end. And so every step sets up the next step. So if you have poor chewing, then you're going to have poor stomach digestion, and then it just goes down the line. And so
Mhm.
that's really the way to kind of think about your digestion. I can give you a link for a free tool that you can offer to your audience also. It's
Okay.
just kind of like it just is a great way to create awareness and understanding about your own digestion. And so that's really, the second part. Nutrition obviously is intimately involved. And I really talk about nutrition in a much different way than a lot of people. A lot of people talk about macros, and yes, we know that vitamins and minerals are really important, but really macronutrients are where the energy comes from, and
Mhm.
and some nutrients too, but really nutrients are what run your body. Every biochemical process in your body relies on vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and fatty acids. Our cells are literally made from fatty acids. Like you won't have proper cellular function if you don't have appropriate fat in your diet, for
Right.
example.
And this is what I try to tell people who are afraid of fat. I still, because I'll be like, and then you add the fat to the dish, and people are like, oh, can we add a little less, or do I have to use that? Or and I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, you have to use it. From a chef's perspective, I'm like, because it tastes better. And then I'm like, and I know it's better for you. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about gobs and gobs of fat or deep frying things necessarily, but people still have that fear of fat that I think is left over from years of us being told that fat is bad for us.
It is
Right.
so true. Oh my God. I mean, that's how I grew up, right? It's
Yeah.
just my generation or I'm 53. So yeah, just fear of fat, so paranoid. Fat makes you fat. Fat causes heart disease and cholesterol. We know that those things aren't true,
They're
even
not
though a
true
lot of people
anymore.
still operate under those thoughts. And so yeah, so the thing, is that we have to be bringing those nutrients into our diet, but we also have to be absorbing them. So a lot of
Mm,
people are familiar with the saying, we are what we eat, but
right.
really we have to take it a step further, and we have to absorb those nutrients so our body can utilize them for every process. And that is part of digestion.
Right.
And then another thing that I really focus on that people often don't even think of is nervous system resilience.
Yeah.
And I've kind of gone round and round about like what to call this. And I just keep coming back to nervous system resilience because it really is just your ability to handle like the day-to-day stressors and then also the big stressors that happen too. And so it's your nervous system's ability to withstand the pressure or the stress of that, because your gut and your brain are intimately connected together. And so what I see a lot in digestion is people who have dysregulated nervous systems, which was me. I mean, that was really a big part of my digestive problem, is they just don't digest food very well because we have a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. And we literally can't digest food when we're in a sympathetic tone. And our body doesn't know that there's no lions that we're running from,
Right.
We're not fighting for our lives anymore out in the wild like that. Our stressors are different now. And so figuring out how to regulate that, and that comes back to awareness too. And that was probably the thing that took me the longest to figure out for myself, is that I really did have some pretty significant dysfunction in my resilience. And I needed to figure out like how to support myself and on a daily basis. And so a lot of people think that this is, like meditating every day, and it might be that, but I really try and help people find things that they enjoy, that are actionable, that are kind of like a little short little list of things, like I'm feeling really dysregulated, or I just found some bad news out, or whatever the case is, what do I need right now for my body?
Yeah. I think that's so huge. I realized a couple years ago that I think I'd been dysregulated for like my entire life. I didn't even understand it. I just thought it was normal.
Yeah.
And I started working with a coach, not in nutrition and other emotional relationship stuff, and learning more about the nervous system. I was like, wait, but this is normal. She's like, no, that is not normal. You don't have to feel like that all the time.
Exactly.
And that was just like, for me. And I totally agree with you about doing like the small things to regulate our nervous system. Like, I'm not good at sitting down and being like, I'm going to meditate. I'm more like, okay, I'm going to stop and take 10 deep breaths, which is totally doable.
Totally. And so when you were talking about before, like trying one thing, and being like, oh, that didn't work. I think the other thing that people really have to get behind and understand is that these are things like that we're doing that we need to have consistency, and we need to give it a chance, because none of the things that we are struggling with, whether it's symptoms or conditions or diseases, nothing happened overnight. I mean, this has all been going on for many, many years. And so we have to give our bodies a chance to kind of feel the support and then lean into that. And, I think my best example about that is that I love to practice yoga nidra. I don't know if you know what that is, but
not exactly. Why don't you share for people who don't?
And I can send you the link for the YouTube channel that I like. It's just a free channel. Basically, yoga nidra, a lot of people also call it non-sleep deep rest. I think Andrew Huberman, who has a famous podcast, talked about it in that way. They've done lots of studies on it. It's not yoga. It's basically laying in a comfortable position and doing kind of like a guided, you might call it a meditation. It probably depends on what type you're listening to. The one I listen to, or the woman that I follow the most closely, is probably more like a guided, like not really visualization, because you're not trying to, get the brain going. You're trying to give the brain a rest. And so you're just following her cues, and she's talking a lot about body parts. And so, it's like knee, ankle, toe, and it sounds, if you were listening to it from the outside, you'd be like, what the heck? But it is the most calming and relaxing thing, and especially when you're conditioned to do it. So I did it very sporadically, and I was kind of in that camp where like, I don't know if it really helps me or not. And I was kind of forced into a position where I had to take care of myself. And my husband said to me, why don't you just do a yoga nidra every day And I was like, okay, I can do a 10-minute yoga nidra, right? I mostly work from home. I have that, but I have a lot of clients who work out of their home and do yoga nidra. So you can really do it anywhere. And when I was consistent, after about 2 weeks, it was like a complete game changer for me. I kind of have a lot of stress in my life right now, and my mom is on hospice, and I can have kind of a rough day with her, just sad and emotional. I do a yoga nidra and it's like a complete reset. My body knows that that is kind of like the safe place for me to turn off my brain, turn off my emotions, just give myself some rest is really a lot of what it is. Even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes. So I have my husband hooked on it now.
Yeah.
I recommend it to everyone because it is, I think, and it's funny because I kind of feel the same way you feel about meditation. And I know a lot of meditation teachers that are like, you don't have to be perfect. Like we're all perfectionistic. We have all the thoughts pop in our head, but that's okay. Like, yeah, I understand that and get that. But the thing with yoga nidra is like, I never feel that way. I never feel like turned on from it. It only just down regulates me.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I heard someone suggest to me once to do it about 8 hours after you woke up. Because another thing that I've really struggled with in my life that's much improved in the last couple of years is sleep. Mm-hmm. And sleep kind of falls into that circadian rhythm category because obviously we spend a good amount of our 24 hours sleeping, or we should be. And so it's profoundly impacted my sleep in a positive way. And I know that that's just the downregulation of my nervous system.
I love that. I love this because I've been doing a practice like that for a while, but I didn't know it had a name. It's something I kind of came to on my own. Like, it's like a very much a present moment thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I can feel my knee. I can feel the breath coming in and out. And I completely relate to what you're saying about that, about how it feels. And I'm like, oh, it has a name. That's really cool. I didn't know it was a thing. Yoga nidra. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's just, finding that thing for you is what's really important. And so I kind of have this short list of things. I also love the float tank, which is like a saltwater float tank.
Yeah.
Obviously that's not something that you're going to go do every day. I don't have the ability to do that, but that is kind of one of those things on my list. When I'm feeling kind of fried, I go and do that. And that is like a complete nervous system reset for me too.
I love it. I love it.
So I think that that's like a great actionable thing that people can do is like build that awareness for what you need. The breathing that you mentioned is amazing. Doing yoga nidra. I think going outside is really important. I mean, even if you're in the city or somewhere, it doesn't have to be in nature. Nature is like a bonus, but go outside, like breathe fresh air, look at the sun, don't hurt your eyes, but like, the change of scenery is really important too. We kind of get into this little cocoon in our day where we're just like work, go, go, go. And taking those breaks is just really important.
Hey there, Cooking from Scratch podcast listeners. If you've been paying attention to previous episodes, you know that health is one of my biggest motivators for cooking. When I started eating high-protein meals a couple of years ago, it gave me more energy and resolved other health issues I was having. This, in turn, inspired me to start sharing the recipes and meal plans I created using my 17-plus years of experience as a chef and recipe blogger with other health-conscious eaters. If you're on the high-protein meal train, or even if you're just curious about it, listen up, because I have something that will help you eliminate the guesswork from high-protein eating and easily hit 30 grams of protein at every meal. In my new free masterclass, 5 Simple Steps to Master Your High-Protein Meals, you'll discover why wasting time and energy on hours of meal prep is not the answer, and what you need to do instead to always have a craveable high-protein meal at your fingertips. In addition, you'll also discover the most important changes you can make now to end meal decision fatigue and how to easily hit 30 grams of high quality animal protein at every meal without feeling stressed or overwhelmed. When you tune into this no-cost masterclass, you'll walk away feeling confident that you are on track to hit your health goals. And for all who attend this live free training, you'll get a free copy of my 4-day high-protein meal plan, as well as the opportunity to join my high-protein meals membership for high-protein eaters. Now, all who registered for this no-cost class will receive a replay, but you're going to want to do your best to tune in live because the high-protein meal plan that's full of incredible chef-created meals that take less than 30 minutes to make will only be available to those who attend live. To save your spot for this free training, go to www.soulspacechef.com/class. Again, that's soulspacechef.com/class, and I can't wait to see you there. Now, back to the episode. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I wanted to switch gears a little bit back to, so I have a high protein meal membership for women over 40. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about this back when you were talking about digestion. Sometimes people, the issue comes that they're, it's a digestion issue. They're like, they want to do it. They're like, this sounds great. And then suddenly they're like, oh, I guess I don't, because I focus on animal protein. They're like, oh, maybe I guess I just don't digest meat very well. And then like, that's kind of where the journey stops. And I'm like, well, gut healing's a thing. And so can you talk a little bit more about like a foundational journey with that might look like if you start eating more protein and then you're noticing your digestive unrest? Like what are things that you can do to continue on that journey, not just give it up?
Absolutely. So this is really common.
Yeah.
I would say 98% of my clients don't eat enough protein. I mean, I think I don't work with a ton of men, but it is just across the board.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes, and I would say that I have some vegetarian clients that self-select away from animal protein, not as for an ethical reason, but for the lack of digestion. They don't even realize it, that they're not digesting animal protein, so they try and shift towards plant proteins. And you probably know that plant protein, you're just going to get way more calories trying to get the same amount of nutrition, an amino acid profile that you get from animal protein. So I'm a huge animal protein advocate. Obviously, as high as quality as you can get is important. And really, like, I think people are so worried about protein too, because they think, oh, my kidneys and this and that, but it's really not that big of a concern if you're in that kind of moderate range. And so when you're saying high, it's probably really more like
I'm saying 30 grams. I'm saying 30 grams per meal. That's where I start because I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just like, and that's how I write my recipes is 30 grams per serving of animal-based protein.
That is totally appropriate for really anyone. Like, I mean, unless you're talking kids, but you're talking adults.
Right. No, I'm talking women over 40.
Yeah. So that's very appropriate.
Yeah.
And gives you all the amino acids. And that's the beauty of animal protein, right? It's like, you don't even have to think about that.
Right.
And so, that you're nourished and your blood sugar is going to be balanced and your metabolism is going to function optimally at that level. And so the thing with digestion and protein is that really there's two things to think about. So really stomach digestion is where protein digestion starts. So you have to have a proper amount of stomach acid to be able to break down protein. Like that's just the bottom line. And really the way the body works is that really what the food is called when it's in your stomach is called chyme. And so when your chyme is at a proper acidity, it's been digested, that kind of churn and burn that we know that our stomach does, it opens the door to go into the small intestine. And that's where the small intestine is pulling out vitamins and minerals and amino acids and fatty acids and absorbing them for use in the body. And if the protein isn't digested properly, it's going to sit in your stomach and it ferments because it's not meant to be in the stomach for long periods of time. And your body can't break it down. And so people often get like burping after they eat, within I don't know, immediately to an hour after. Also, people get kind of like indigestion. I call it high bloating, which is like feels more like stomach bloating. Those are kind of more of the symptoms that people feel, or they just eat like red meat or something that's a little bit harder to break down. And they're like, oh, it just feels like like a big glob in my stomach.
Right.
Those are all signs that you probably aren't digesting protein very well. So I would say step number one is to back up and think about how much you're chewing your food.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the recommendation for chewing is like 20 to 30 times a bite. I mean,
Totally. We did that in culinary school one lesson. There she was like 30 times, and we're all like sitting there chewing. Like, are you kidding me?
Awkward.
It disappears.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It turns
into
that? Like mush, which a lot of people can't handle from like
true. I love it.
So yeah. So the way I approach chewing with people is getting into that parasympathetic state. So really to shift into the rest and digest, you have to go from like running around in your day to like sitting down and being able to digest. So a lot of times it can just be shifting. And this is a practice that you can do with breathing, doing some box breathing, doing some just general deep breaths, and really kind of like slowing down. Those things are the things that are going to help cue your body. Now, if you do that one time, it's probably not going to do very much. But if you do that every single time you eat, within a week or so, your body is going to be cued to do that. So that's really like step one. Step two is chewing thoroughly. So what I tell people is like, figure out how much you're chewing now. So if you're chewing your food and meat 5 times now, then try and double that and just work on that and get to a point where you feel really good about the amount of times that you're chewing. I live in a house with a bunch of really fast eaters. I have 2 teenage boys, and my husband, had 4 brothers, and everyone eats really fast. And so we make a joke of it, and it's like a competition, which works really well with boys, and who can finish last. I always win, but they're always vying for second, So like make it fun with the people that you're eating with. And just focus on one meal, because it seems overwhelming to try and do multiple meals, or every meal. Just focus on one meal. And so that's a great place to start. So I would say a lot of times when people focus on this and really give it the intention that it takes, they notice a difference within a week or two. And then, if you need stomach acid support, if you need digestive enzyme support, you can use those types of products for short periods of time, because what it does is it gives your body the ability to digest better, and then you can absorb the nutrients that you need to build the enzymes that you're replacing. And so then you gradually just kind of wean off of it, and you're like, oh, wow, I can digest protein. But like, for example, I digest fish and poultry really well. I have no problem. The red meat, I just need a little bit of support. So I usually take a little bit of HCl, which is basically stomach acid, when I eat like a steak or something like that, which isn't super often, but I enjoy eating it. And so I'm not going to stop eating it. And I just know that my body needs a little bit of help.
Yeah. I love that. And that's exactly what you were talking about. Like, the first thing you went to is chew your food, not take a supplement, right? Because there's things that we can absolutely do. Because I think people get kind of like, oh no, my digestion's not working. What am I supposed to do? Okay, it's time to call the doctor. And the next thing you know, you're in this kind of rabbit hole of, oh shoot, when maybe just chewing your food a little bit more, or sitting down.
Absolutely.
Sitting down is such a big one. We spend so many times just shoving food in our mouth.
Yeah.
Not even sitting.
I have a lot of clients who are women who are dropping kids off at school or on the go in the morning. And so they often drink like a smoothie or a protein shake or something like that. And so I don't really try and talk them out of that, because I think that that's kind of a big shift and hard to wrap your head around if you're trying to get 3 kids to school or something like that. And so I just challenge them to make that last longer. So like the perfect example is I had this client who had horrible bloating and like IBS, and she would literally barely make it through her drop-off like rotation and have to come home and run to the bathroom while she's drinking the smoothie. And so I said, well, why don't you just make it last through the whole thing. When you get home, you just finish it. Because even though drinking in the car, eating in the car isn't ideal, that was part of her day. So we literally just started doing that. Within a week, she has no more issue anymore.
Oh, I love
She's
it.
not slamming the smoothie, right? And that's like a protein powder that's already broken down. And so her body just wasn't able to handle that. And we're not designed to eat things quickly. So,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of little tweaks and things you can try and do. But I would just say, like, don't give up. It's kind of like if you ever try to get kids to try new foods, you would never
Right.
just stop with one time. You know that as a chef, like
Right.
your palate needs like 10 to 12 or however many times, right?
Right.
So my favorite thing I used to always tell my kids when they were little, and they tell me all the time now. In fact, my youngest just used it on me last night because him and my husband made something with mushrooms, and I don't like mushrooms. I don't like the texture of mushrooms. I ate a couple of them, right? But he's like, maybe you haven't eaten it enough times yet. You don't know that it could be your favorite food.
I love it when they do that.
Oh gosh. All right.
Like, all right, well, at least you've been listening to me.
Exactly. So, I would say just be conscious, and like give yourself a chance. Like say, I'm going to give this 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, and really try and institute some of these little things into your practice.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that ties in nicely to what you're talking about knowing your why. Like sometimes I wonder if people get into healthy eating because they know they're supposed to, but they're kind of anti it. They're like, oh, I have to do this healthy eating thing. And it's never going to last if you're being told you have to do it, right? You really have to come to your own why, which could be so many things. I feel like feel better. I mean, what are some other things? Better health diagnoses.
This is so personal for me. So kind of how I got into thinking that nutrition was going to help me was that I did a Whole30. And so a lot of people might be familiar with the Whole30 elimination diet. And it took me like 3 months to wrap my head around doing this, which is kind of ridiculous, right? Because I didn't want to give up dairy. I was in love with dairy. I had to have the cheese. Like, how could I go through a whole day without that, much less 30 days? And so when I finally did it and I realized that that was really a big part of my problem, that I just don't digest dairy very well, I really, I think initially I was like, okay, 30 days, that's it. I'm just reintroducing the dairy, but it didn't go well. And my system wasn't ready for it again. And I finally just had to sit down with myself and be like, what is your goal here? Is your goal to go back and forth because no one's telling you to give up the dairy? And I just said, maybe I just need to give it more time. Maybe I'm going to do it for 6 months. So I just told myself, I'm doing it for 6 months. I'm going dairy free. I was already totally off milk and creamer and all of that. It really was cheese. And so I just told myself, I'm just not eating it right now. And I'm supporting my body. I know my body doesn't like dairy. I feel a lot better. My symptoms are a ton better. And so I'm just going to give it a little bit longer and allow my body to heal. And that was what I needed. I needed to be off it a little bit longer. And I tell people now, like, I can have ice cream, which before I could never even have ice cream without some enzymes. And even that didn't really help me very much. But I just say 4 times a year when my husband and my kids and myself have birthdays, I want ice cream. And we make homemade ice cream and I eat the ice cream and I'm fine. It's no big deal. Yeah. And then every now and then I'll have some goat cheese. And that's all I really want, But it had to be that kind of mature conversation with myself of like, is this really that big of a deal? I think you're making it into way bigger of a deal. Mm-hmm. You are. And to understand the emotional connection, right?
I was just going to say that. Yeah. It's the emotional connection we have to these foods.
Yeah. And that's okay. I think in some ways it's okay to have that to food. I mean, it's such a personal experience, a familial experience, a cultural experience. But at the end of the day, like what I really wanted is to feel better and to improve my health. And I had horrible sinus infections. Was constantly on antibiotics. I mean, I was just kind of a hot mess. And so it really just, it changed everything for me. And then it also gave me the confidence to just stand up for myself too, right? And like know that I could affect my own health. And then that was just the catalyst for me to keep going. And so, my boys will sometimes say to me, "Oh, I'm sorry you can't have this cheesecake." And it's like, I just choose not to eat the cheesecake, or I'll have a tiny little bite or something.
Yeah.
And I'm satisfied with that. So
yeah. I love that. That's why I think food is so powerful, is it is so multi-layered. It's cultural, it's nutritional, it's all the things. And it's not so simple as just giving something up. I had the same experience with coffee too.
mm-hmm.
Like I started getting really sensitive to caffeine. I have a really strong emotional attachment to coffee, being half Turkish. And I was like, I just can't give up coffee. And then it was exactly the same thing. Like, what do I want here? Do I want to feel really terrible? Or do I want to actually feel better? And what's the price here? And so,
right. Yeah. And I think, and the same, I would say coffee is really popular with that, and also like wine or alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing is like once you do it for a period of time and you decide you're just doing it for yourself, you're not doing it because Charis asked you to do it or anyone else, you're just doing it. And then you just, again, like have awareness and notice like what has changed for you,
Yeah, I love that.
And that's the game changer.
I agree. How can people get a hold of you if they want to work with you or know more about what you do? Or
so my practice is called Prime To Nourish. So PRIMETO and then the word nourished, just like it sounds. And you can send me a message there. I talk to people on like free discovery calls.
And that's on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm always happy to do that. I'm on Instagram at Prime To Nourish is my handle also. So yeah, I love chatting with people and trying to help them, guide them. I think it's kind of the nurse in me too, I didn't really realize when I went to nursing school that nurses were teachers. And so I think once I kind of embodied that, I was like, oh, I love talking to people and helping guide them a little bit, I also have a great service that's called an audit. And so basically you just fill out some information about yourself and everything you're going through. And I give you like my recommendations in a recorded video. And so it's like a low price point, really easy barrier to entry. People really seem to love it. And then if we end up working together past that, you can just apply what you paid towards your package. And it's just a good way to kind of get a taste of a little bit of what I do and how I would recommend things for you.
Yeah, taking the first step.
I love
that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest. I appreciate it.
No problem. Super fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode from start to finish. If you have any questions or comments about what was shared, please click on the link at the top of the show notes to send us a note. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, and share this episode with your friends.